everyone. Welcome back to Foreignconnect podcast, a podcast where we talk about American business services and also American market opportunities. Today we have a special guest, Eric, from the 5 Echelon Group. Eric is an executive leader with over 30 years of experience in marketing, product development, and digital transformation. He has worked with large global companies and small startups to develop strategies to bring innovative products to the market. After years of working in the financial services and informational technology industries, including 18 years at the Oracle Corporation, Eric ventured into the world of entrepreneurship by founding his own company, the 5 Echelon Group. The company focuses on building and executing marketing strategies for small and mid-sized businesses. Eric is also the host of weekly podcast, the Virtual CMO. The show is geared toward marketing professionals looking for tactics and strategies to improve their company marketing trajectories. So in this interview, I have a lot of valuable information from him, so I hope you enjoy. So welcome, Eric. Thank you very much for coming to the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So today we prepared 3 questions that are commonly asked from my clients for American businesses like you. So I just wanted to ask you these 3 questions to get your opinion of this, okay? So the first one I wanted to ask today is, this is really big questions, honestly. What kind of market barrier do you see for Japanese companies to enter American market?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think this holds true not just for Japanese companies, but any company that's coming from outside the U.S. into the U.S. market. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of different ways that you could look at it, but I would break it down into really 3 different pieces, 3 different barriers that are in effect there. The first is probably a cultural barrier. Mm-hmm. Let me give you a great example of this, is that in my work, oftentimes I outsource certain things to different agencies, different people in other parts of the world. Mm-hmm. And somebody can write something in English, and it's perfectly grammatically correct for the country that they're in. But when you take that same piece of content and you give it to an American audience, they will immediately detect that it wasn't written locally. Just as Shakespeare was the English of his day, we look at that today and we say, yeah, it's awfully poetic, but it's not really the way we speak today. So that's just a simple example of culturally how things can be different. And I think it even goes to customs. It goes to the way products and services are marketed and what the expectations of customers and businesses are in different geographies. And so whether you're an American business coming to Japan or a Japanese business coming to the United States, there are definitely things that you have to do, especially in your marketing, to make sure that your brand appeals to the kinds of businesses or consumers that you're going after. So culturally, obviously, that's a big one that is going to be prominent. We would look at all of the marketing materials that would have to go out, and we would say, does this fit in with the culture here? So maybe there are things that could be reused, but they would have to be re-examined in the light of what the preferences are here. So culture is number 1. The second place is really the overall marketplace where you're going to be selling your products and services. So there may be different preferences here as to how a consumer or a business would buy a product and service. For example, maybe it's a direct marketing relationship in Japan, but here it would go through a reseller. Maybe it's a customer would buy something in conjunction with something else here, where it may be a standalone product offering in Japan. So it's very important to understand how people buy and what the marketplace is for those various products and services. So it's the different buying options, the way products are priced, the channels that they're sold in. I think that those are all very important in this overall marketplace. And I think the third area that I would focus in as a barrier would be the competitive landscape. Who are the competitors for the product or service that you're offering? and what target market are they going after. So if you take an example of the automobile industry, you have everything from very small economy cars to big, large luxury cars or SUVs and pickup trucks. There's a car for just about everybody, but you're not going to market a pickup truck the same way you would market an economy car. Each one has a very specific consumer, a very specific buyer. And so if you are selling pickup trucks, you need to understand what the other people who are selling pickup trucks are doing in their marketplace, how they've defined their customer, what exactly they are doing to sell to those customers, and you want to focus in on that. So it's very important to understand the overall competitive landscape and where there might be opportunities for your product or service to fit into that landscape. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So I guess I have a following up questions given your answer. The first one is, can you kind of give us the example of a corporation that you know of in America, or maybe international corporation that came to America and then did the rebranding in order for them to do business in America? Because the first one you said was rebranding to make sure that your message of the brand is delivered in a correct way, accustomed to the culture you're adapting to, right? Like that's our first one you gave as an answer. And I was wondering if you could come up with sort of one international corporation just right now, if you can think of any.
So the one that comes to mind, because I just had a cup myself, is Nespresso. So Nespresso is a very popular coffee in Europe, especially. But Americans are all about fast. They want fast, they want convenient. And so there was a period where they were very unsuccessful really breaking into the market, even though they're a very large company, because their way of producing a cup of coffee was much more elegant. It was much more European in its overall experience. So they really had to keep their brand, but they had to change the way they sold it here and push the idea of convenience. Obviously, there was this whole thing that has come up with these K-cups where you take a small cup and you make a very quick pot of coffee. And they were able to take that same concept of convenience, but say, we're still going to do it in a very European, a very elegant way. So that's just a quick example off the top of my head where I can see how a company's had to change how they marketed their product for this specific market.
I see. That's excellent. Actually, that makes me think of another example. It's the same thing, coffee. My boyfriend lives in Italy, and he said that he doesn't have any Starbucks there in Italy, right? And then I asked him, so why do you think that is? And he said, oh, exactly what you said. Like here, the idea of coffee is never like a big, American, massive cup. It doesn't come like that. It's always like espresso, like a tiny thing. And then we usually drink it in the morning, and we never carry it around. Like that's very American idea. And I thought it was very interesting. It's definitely like a culture is playing a role in that. So
well, I think that's a great example. And, you even think of American companies that have come to Japan. McDonald's is popular in Japan, right? But the menu is not going to be the same. It's going to be adapted for Japanese tastes.
Yep,
Japanese
burger.
Yeah, right, exactly. Or if you go to a Japanese restaurant here in America, it's probably very different than the traditional Japanese food that you're used to because it's been adapted for American tastes. So the essence of the brand can be there, but it has to be adapted for the market that you're serving.
Right. I see. Okay, well, I'm going to move on to the next question. Okay, so my next question is, so part of what you do is to make strategic marketing plan for your clients. I wanted to know a little bit of your process going into that. How do you usually create strategic marketing plan for your clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think when we work with clients to put together a strategic marketing plan, the very first thing we do is meet with the management team to understand what are the goals and objectives that they have for the business. Because you can't really build a solid marketing plan without a firm understanding of what the goals you're trying to achieve are.
Mm-hmm.
So there needs to be a very firm understanding of what the goals and objectives are.
Mm-hmm.
Once we get those together, we need to understand what the time frame is, because those goals, in order to reach those goals, and especially if you're using marketing to reach those goals, things take time. They don't happen overnight. And so you have to make sure that there's alignment in terms of when those goals can be reached and the dollars, the marketing dollars that it's going to take to reach those goals based on the time frame that's in place. So once all that gets established, then we sort of move on to the product messaging. How do we want to define the products and services that you're offering? And as part of that, you really have to figure out who is your target customer. What is the very specific customer, the very specific segment that you're going after with your products and services? And then how can we build our messaging to attract that particular segment? I think a mistake that a lot of businesses make is they go after too broad a segment. Again, you know, in the automobile example that we were using before, you don't just sell cars to everybody, you sell very specific models to very specific people. And those cars are designed with that very specific buyer in mind. And so the same thing has to be true here. We need to understand sort of what makes your product unique, what are the differentiators of that product. And one thing I talk a lot about is what we call product market fit. Where does that product fit into the marketplace? Is there an opening that that product can work its way into, or does there need to be some adjustment one way or to the other to find an opening for that product to be successful? So it's really putting all these things together and then figuring out that, yes, there is demand. We know who the target customer is, and then we build the messaging up around it. So once all of that is done, then we take a look at the brand itself and say, what do we need to do to raise the visibility of this brand? Do we need to make some refinements? Do we need to update the website? Do we need to create some new collateral? Do we need to refresh the brand, make it more modern? Or do something to make it fit in better so that the customers will understand what that brand represents, what are the values behind that brand. So we look at all of that and then start to create the pieces that are needed to build an overall awareness campaign for the brand. And then as all of that starts to come together, we pick specific marketing tactics that we can then start to employ to be able to build that brand awareness and generate the demand. And then figure out how the company, once that demand starts coming in, is going to start fulfilling that demand, whether it's a product or service that, you know, is a simple point and click and you purchase it, or whether it's something that actually goes to a sales team where they then have to get some further sales people involved to actually sell and, you know, follow through and contract that particular product or service. So it's a process for sure. There's a lot of steps in there in order to build out that strategic plan. But if you take this step by step, then what you can do is you can create a plan that you can measure against. And when you can measure against a plan, that's when you can know if the money that you're spending is ultimately being successfully spent, because you can track it and monitor it and measure it.
I see. That's really promising that you provide all this turnkey solution at one stop. That's really cool. Okay, well, I have a following up questions to your process then. It seems like your process involves a lot of research phases, right? Can you kind of sort of elaborate how the research is done usually? Is there a process for researching as well?
Yeah, so again, it really depends on the product segment or the industry that the business is in. Because obviously myself or others, we are not experienced in every single industry out there. So what has to happen is we have to become educated on the industry that we're going after. We have to understand who the competitors are. And then what we can do is, once we get an overview of what the product and service is, what the overall industry is, then we can go off on our own and bring in either outside resources if needed, or do the research, because there's so much information out there to be able to then figure out what are the different pieces that we need to pull together. So it sounds like a huge work effort, but once you get that foundation in place, once we get that understanding of the products and services, the industry and the competitors, we can go off and do a lot of that research on our own.
Nice. Nice. Okay. So I'm going to actually move on to the third question. I think this is going to be actually a big question for many Japanese companies because the term CMO, the one they use, I think it's not very used here. So I think this is going to be very interesting. So essentially you describe yourself as virtual CMO or CMO, right? Like hired CMO. Can you kind of describe what CMO is first?
Yeah, so not every business has a CMO for sure. So a CMO means a chief marketing officer. It just means the person ultimately responsible for building the marketing strategy and then getting that strategy executed. So most large corporations, they will have a chief marketing officer. Many mid-sized corporations will have that as well. As you get into smaller corporations, maybe it would be a vice president of marketing or a senior marketing manager or marketing director. So it could have various titles, but for the sake of, my business and the way I talk about it in the market, it is a chief marketing officer, the person who's responsible for building out that strategy. And the difference, I think, in terms of what I tend to talk about with my clients is as a virtual CMO, what I do is I come into the marketplace and say, okay, you are a business that is looking for the services of a marketing expert, somebody to help you put together a strategy, somebody to help craft that plan, and then knowing the expertise that's in the market, helping coordinate the relationship with all the different vendors that are going to be required then to actually execute that plan. That's what a virtual CMO does. It's not a full-time employee. It's not somebody who is brought on board to the company as a full-time. It's somebody who works there part-time. But it's excellent for companies who are looking to get expertise in a marketplace, somebody who has the connection, somebody who has the experience, but doesn't necessarily want to bring on a full-time employee onto the payroll. And for some companies, it's a transition as well. Maybe as they're entering a market, down the road, they will want to have a full-time employee, but maybe they want somebody to get the strategy in place, get things moving while they get their operations set up and get a firm foundation in place. So it can also work that way as well. But it's really designed to help companies get that foundation and then start executing it. Because marketing is complicated. If you think about all the different things that need to be done, whether it's your digital presence, your website, all the social media channels, videos that need to be created. We're in a world of content marketing right now, which is you trying to attract leads to your website without having to spend a lot of money to do that. It's a lot of work to create all of that material. It's more than a full-time job for somebody. It's a team of people, especially if you want to do it right. And what I find a lot of companies do in error is they take on too much themselves. They hire on a couple junior level people to execute some of these marketing tactics. And what happens is maybe they're okay at doing specific things, but they don't really have a lot of experience or guidance to know where to go with it. And so what happens is they're able to put some marketing out into the marketplace, but it's not with any specific goals or objectives that really drive the business forward. And what happens is you end up wasting time, you end up wasting money, and especially for businesses that are trying to set up operations here in the United States, you don't have a lot of time, right? That's a big investment for a company to start to open up a new presence in a new market. So you want to get things going as quickly as possible. So having someone with experience, having a firm that can help you because they have the connections, they know the resources, they know the vendors to go to get things done quickly, efficiently, and within budget is one of the real things that we try to offer to the marketplace. And one of the things that I think businesses look to us to help them do to be successful.
I see. So I think there's still a lot more questions to it because the term itself is kind of new to some of us. So that being said, I also want to know what are the qualifications do you think makes someone a good CMO? What are the things do you think people should look for when we are hiring for CMO? Sorry. Yeah.
I think it's good because too often I think when there's a hiring process in place, somebody will say, well, let's keep going with our automobile example. So if I'm an automobile maker, I say, well, I want somebody who has experience marketing automobiles. Well, there are a certain number of those people out there, right? But the world isn't full of them. That's a very specific set of people. What I believe is more important when you are looking for somebody to help you with your marketing is, do they have experience helping market to other businesses, or do they have experience marketing to consumers? Because that is really the big differentiator, I think, in skill sets. There's a lot of commonality between marketing one industry versus another, but there are a lot of differences between marketing to a business versus marketing to a consumer. And what I mean by that is that when you're marketing to a consumer, oftentimes that's a fairly short sales cycle. There tends to be a lot of upfront work to raise awareness, to get people interested in your products and services, but buying it is usually a credit card transaction or a click or whatnot. Most purchases are very quick. When you're talking about businesses, these tend to be larger dollar transactions, many of which have long sales cycles because they have to go through a contracting process. Maybe there are multiple sign-offs that are required within an organization to get approval to buy something. And so there's a lot more relationship management that is involved in a business-to-business transaction. And so in marketing, we talk about a buyer's journey. And in a business-to-business relationship, that can be a long journey. I've worked with many companies where there's a 12-month, 16-month sales cycle for some products because they're multi-million-dollar products. Well, that's very different than if you're selling a $25 piece of clothing to a consumer. And so what I would say to your clients, for people who are looking for marketing expertise, is worry less about their specific industry background, but worry more about, have they had experience selling to other businesses, or has it been more focused on selling to other consumers? Because that's a pretty different skill set. You will market very differently to each of those groups.
That makes a lot of sense. Well, I think that summarizes my questions of the day today. So I very much thank you for coming onto my show. And finally, before I let you go, can you tell us where people can find you, your website and social media, everything?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me as a guest. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you and your audience. So again, my name was Eric Dickmann, and my company is called the 5 Echelon Group. And we can be found at the web at 5echelon.com. And I can be found on LinkedIn at Eric Dickmann, E. Dickmann on LinkedIn, and E. Dickmann on Twitter as well. So any of those are quick and easy ways to find me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Foreignconnect podcast, a podcast where we talk about American business services and also American market opportunities. Today, we have a special guest, Eric, from the 5 Echelon Group. Eric is an executive leader with over 30 years of experience in marketing, product development, and digital transformation. He has worked with large global companies and small startups to develop strategies to bring innovative products to the market. After years of working in the financial services and informational technology industries, including 18 years at the Oracle Corporation, Eric ventured into the world of entrepreneurship by founding his own company, the 5 Echelon Group. The company focuses on building and executing marketing strategies for small and mid-sized businesses. Eric is also the host of weekly podcast, the Virtual CMO. The show is geared toward marketing professionals looking for tactics and strategies to improve their company marketing trajectories. So in this interview, I have a lot of valuable information from him, so I hope you enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Foreignconnect podcast, a podcast where we talk about American business services and also American market opportunities. Today, we have a special guest, Eric, from the 5 Echelon Group. Eric is an executive leader with over 30 years of experience in marketing, product development, and digital transformation. He has worked with large global companies and small startups to develop strategies to bring innovative products to the market. After years of working in the financial services and informational technology industries, including 18 years at the Oracle Corporation, Eric ventured into the world of entrepreneurship by founding his own company, the 5 Echelon Group. The company focuses on building and executing marketing strategies for small and mid-sized businesses. Eric is also the host of weekly podcast, the Virtual CMO. The show is geared toward marketing professionals looking for tactics and strategies to improve their company marketing trajectories. So in this interview, I have a lot of valuable information from him, so I hope you enjoy.